Diabetes!
Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. Yeah, I need to look there. Hey, it's Mike. Let's talk about Reaper. If you've watched any of my live streams, you know that I'm a big fan of channel strips. And the primary reason that I'm a big fan of channel strips is they significantly increase my workflow. I know a lot of YouTubers tend to promote the latest and greatest plugins, and there's nothing wrong with checking out new plugins. There's a lot of great tools being released, it seems like every other day. But if we think back to many of the great mixing engineers of the past, a lot of them would mix on the same consoles for years, decades even. And there's a lot to be said for familiarizing yourself with a standardized set of tools. Whatever tools you standardize on is completely up to you, because only you can determine what your sound is and what sounds good to you. But I firmly stand behind the statement that using a handful of tools that you know very well will help you to complete your mixes even faster. Today I'd like to take a look at a few channel strips that I like, and also maybe have a bit of a surprise channel strip at the end. Reaper has some fantastic stock plugins, and though they may not be visually stunning, they tend to sound great, are low latency, and are very light on CPU. And some of those same properties are things that I look for in a channel strip. Let's take a look at a few. The project that I've got open doesn't look like the typical project that I would have. You may notice that there's only one track. This is a recording from a recent rehearsal of my band Midlife Riot, and this particular day was a writing session. When we're having a writing session, I like to record so we can document whatever ideas we came up with and be able to revisit them and refine them a bit later. And while I've got an interface that supports 24 tracks in and out, it's a lot quicker just to set up my Zoom H6 field recorder and use the XY mics to capture the practice. Let's take a quick listen to this one section from our intro, and then we'll take a look at a few channel strips. So that's the natural sound as the Zoom field recorder heard it in the room. Let's open up the effects and take a look at a few channel strips. Admittedly, what got me to even want to make this video about channel strips was a trial of the new Harrison 32 Classic channel strip. I've got this a bit further down in the list, but I'll take it and move it up to the top, and explain a few things about this channel strip. Again, if you've watched my live streams, you know that I am a huge fan of PSP Infinistrip. What I like about PSP Infinistrip is its near infinite flexibility for the different processing modules that you can add up, and also the fact that it's zero latency, which means that I can use the channel strip in my live streams and not have to worry about delay compensation for plugins. And while I'd like to say that I'm Team Reaper for life, I do like to try other DAWs on occasion just to see what's out there. I have tried Harrison Mixbus, and quite frankly, I couldn't get along with it. It's been said that Harrison Mixbus has its own sound, and if you've seen that Dan Worrell video about the topic, I'll let you be the judge for yourself. But I was curious about the channel strip and wanted to give it a try. One of the first things that you may notice about the Harrison channel strip is its simplicity. I don't have a lot of different modules to change in and out like I do with Infinistrip, which at first may seem like a turnoff. But keeping in mind that the primary objective that I would have for a channel strip is speed and efficiency of workflow, the Harrison 32 Classic channel strip checkmarks every box on that list. It's also important to note that the Harrison channel strip is zero latency as well. A few other things that I like about the plugin is the fact that it's scalable, and a lot of plugins are scalable through the menu, but I really like plugins that are scalable by simply dragging the interface. Let me show you what I mean. I'll move this up to the top left corner so I've got a bit more room, and then I'll move down to the lower right corner and left click and drag, and the plugin grows with it. No matter how big or how small I make the channel strip, the graphics are crisp and clean and easy to read. With tooltips enabled, as I mouse over any of the controls, I can see a little bit about what they are. Here's the compressor in and out button, compressor solo, reset compressor, and so on and so forth. Down at the bottom, I do have a little bit of flexibility to reorder the signal chain. I've got 3 different types of compression, a gate, and the gate can also be used in expander mode instead, the compressor, EQ, and of course the drive and the saturation at the front of the chain. I'll make this a little bit smaller and move this back over to where we had it originally. And let's take a listen to that same section of music. I'll put this on repeat, and once it loops back around, I'll turn on the Harrison channel strip. Now it's important to note that the only things that I'm using in this example is the saturation and the compressor. I've got the EQ disabled, and I'm not using the gate as well. If you're interested in particulars, let's take this back over here where we can see better. I'm running looks like a 2.3 to 1 ratio, which I wanted that to be 3, so I must have made a mistake earlier. One thing that I do like about this is if I click on the knobs, I can type what I'd like in any of the different parameters. So I'll make this 3-to-1, and it goes straight to it. Now let's take a listen. And just with that little bit of drive and compression, it seems that the Harrison channel strip really brings that sound to life. I like the saturation and the crunchiness, for lack of a better word, that the combination of the drive and the compressor brings to the recording, and I like how easy and fast it is to dial in a sound that you like on this channel strip. The channel strip's currently on sale for $49.99 as of the filming of this video, and it looks like the suggested retail price is $299.99. I don't know how truthful the sale and the regular price are, because those prices sound an awful lot like maybe Plug-in Alliance, how they've got a lot of their channel strips at $300, but they're on sale seemingly every other week for $5 or something like that. And I've been testing this plugin over the past few days and have seriously considered buying it because it is so much faster to work with this than my beloved PSP Infinistrip. But that also got me to thinking, I wonder if I can make my other plugins sound just like this. Now admittedly, this channel strip is a whole lot faster to work with because of the lack of choices. And the choices that have already been made for me, meaning the modules that are loaded into this, sound great. This led me to want to do a little bit more research on the Harrison 32 Classic console and learn a bit more about the type of compressor and saturation that it has, and then try to mimic this same type of sound in plugins that I already own. So I'll disable the Harrison channel strip, and let's take a look at Infinistrip. By default, I typically have a handful of more modules here, but to make it a fair comparison to what I've got loaded in the Harrison channel strip, I wanted to run just the saturation in the preamp stage and the compressor. Now, PSP Infinistrip has a few different compression types that I can choose from: an opto compressor, a FET, a VCA, and old timer, which is a PSP Infinistrip original compressor. I tried each one and just took a listen to how they sounded, and ultimately settled on the one that I felt best matched the Harrison sound. I'll play some sound samples in just a moment and run them without talking in between so you can clearly hear the similarities and differences between these. But to try to match what I had in Harrison, I ran the 80s style preamp, and I had to crank the drive very high to get the same type of saturation that I felt I was hearing in the Harrison channel strip. Again, I ended up settling on the old timer compressor, and I'm running a very similar compression type here, so 30 milliseconds attack. 25 milliseconds was the fastest release that I had available on this. And then I'm also running a 3-to-1 ratio with a bit of makeup gain. I wanted to do my best to level match each of these so I didn't fool myself into thinking louder is better, as the saying goes. I've got several of the IK Multimedia plugins, and I'm a big fan of most of them. Now admittedly, I've not really loved their channel strips, but I figured since I'm doing this, maybe I can learn to like the channel strips. I tried the British channel and ended up settling with the white channel instead, and was able to get a very similar sound to the Harrison channel strip. One thing I do not like about the IK Multimedia plugins is they are not zero latency. Now, they are relatively low latency, but it's hard to compare low latency to zero latency, particularly when there's a live stream involved. I found it a bit harder to get the saturation in this and had to just really push the compression to get that crunchiness that I was looking for. These are supposed to be analog modeled, but I don't have a dedicated drive knob to intentionally increase saturation. I suppose I could mimic the similar behavior by just increasing the input gain, but I found that I was able to get what I needed by just pushing the compressor. I did have to turn on the fast attack, and mess a little bit with the threshold and the release to get it sounding similar. Just as with the other channel strips, I've got all the other modules turned off, and I'm only running the presumed drive that would be through the input stage, which I'm not pushing any input gain there, and just doing all the heavy lifting with the compressor. I have several channel strips from Plug-in Alliance, but I just picked one and ran with the AMEK, or however that's pronounced, 90... 9099. That's a lot of nines, and I'm dyslexic. So the same type of concept is true with this channel strip. I'm not using any of the additional features on this, just using the compressor, and I've increased the saturation by turning up the total harmonic distortion knob. I did find that I had to run my attack a little bit more aggressive on this, but just for the sake of comparing apples to apples, let's crank that up to exactly 30 milliseconds. I've got my ratio at 3:1, and my release at about 10 milliseconds. And since I was running trials, there's also another one that I found that I kind of like. This is, let me make sure I pronounce this correctly, the CS-5501 version 2 channel strip from TBProAudio. This one is currently in a trial mode as well. The trial mode likes to disable the sound every, I believe it's 90 seconds, but you can reset the timer by clicking the TBProAudio logo in the top right corner. This channel strip, just like Harrison, Infinistrip, and the AMEK 9099, is also zero latency. Now this plugin looks a bit complicated with all of these buttons over to the right side. There are several different modules that are available, and you can put them in any order by simply left-clicking whatever point in the signal chain and choosing what you'd like to be in that part of the signal chain. Once you've got things in the order that you'd like, you can turn the modules on and off by clicking the LED to the right. In this case, just as with the others, I'm using only the saturation and the compressor. I realize that you can see this EQ here and probably a few other things that I'm not using, but at any given time I can hold Shift and click on the desired module to view its controls. This channel strip follows some of the same feature sets that I really enjoy, such as the ability to type in values for any of the different parameters on the channel strip. Again, it's zero latency, which I love, and it's very flexible, but I do find that having this many options tends to make your workflow a bit slower. And I find myself really favoring that Harrison channel strip just for the sheer fact that I can open it up, dial in a sound quickly, and move on. But with all that said, let's take a listen to these back to back and see which one you like. And then, maybe I'll have a surprise for you. Since this whole thing started with Harrison, let's move Harrison right back up to the beginning, and we'll compare these back to back. So which one did you like the best? I really love channel strips because, as I said before, they make my workflow a whole lot faster by giving me the tools that I need most often at my fingertips. While I do feel like I got each of these sounding very similar to each other, at the same time they each had their own character that they imparted to the sound. Wouldn't it be great if Reaper had a channel strip built in? Maybe it does. Let's take a look. I'll disable the TBProAudio plugin and I will add ReaChannel Strip. Now where did that come from? I'm willing to bet that you don't have this. Now, ReaChannel Strip is something that I actually made using the new effects container option. If you'd like to know a little bit more about how to use the effects containers, drop a comment below and I'll show you how to recreate this yourself. Essentially what I've done is I've taken a handful of plugins that would be similar to what you would use in a channel strip. I've got the nonlinear processor, which is what I'm using to mimic the behavior of drive and saturation of an analog console. I've got high pass and low pass filters, a compressor, the downward expander, and if I'm honest, I don't quite remember why I put this here. I think it was probably an accident and maybe I meant to put in a gate. Then I have a 1073 EQ and ReaEQ. Now I spent a little bit of time dialing this in to try to get some behavior that was similar to that of the Harrison channel strip, and I saved a preset. Let's go ahead and load that preset and take a listen. Just as with the others, I'm only running the nonlinear processor for the saturation and drive and the compressor. So there you have it. What do you think? Do you currently include channel strips in your workflow? Why or why not? And I'm also curious if after watching this video it's something that you might want to consider. I found it very interesting how I was able to get a very similar sound using stock Reaper plugins, and it really makes me want to investigate the stock plugins a lot more. I hope this helps. If you like the content you're seeing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and you can support the channel further by clicking the Buy Me a Coffee, I like coffee, Patreon, or Super Thanks links below. Visit us on Discord and engage with other Reaper users, and it most certainly wouldn't hurt to drop a comment down below as well. We'll see you next time. So this is the part where I'm supposed to do something kind of like a Marvel Cinematic Universe post-credit scene. See you next time.